Hey and welcome to another video. In this video, we're going to be working on the gameplay widget. We're going to be creating the appearance as well as adding the functionality to it. With that, let's get started. Starting off with, we're going to go into the BP save game. I just realized that the variable we created would get a little confusing, so we're going to rename it. So F2, and then you can rename it to either KMH question mark or MPH, which either one you prefer. I'm gonna compile and save, and then close that. Then want to head over to widgets, main menu, and then open up the gameplay. And then the gameplay, first thing we're gonna add is a canvas panel, and then we're gonna add an overlay, and then select the overlay, head over to anchors, shift control, let it cover the entire screen. Next thing we're adding is a size box. Select the size box, align it to the center. Width and height override. The width is 1500, the height is 350. And then in the size box, we're going to add two vertical boxes. Oh, actually, no, we should first add a horizontal box. So the vertical box is currently in the size box. Select it, right click, and then wrap with horizontal box. And then now we can add the second vertical. And then in the first vertical, we are going to add a text block. Select the text block and then Control D twice. Rename the first text block to units. The second text block, we are going to name this one transmission. And then the last one, we are going to call this one counters the assist. And then select all three text blocks, set them to fill, vertical alignment to the center, select the vertical box, head over to the padding, and then on the right, we're going to set it to a padding of 20. Select the second vertical box, and then in here, we are going to add a button. But before we do that, we actually need to add a horizontal box with the button selected. Right click, wrap with horizontal box, and then on the button, we are going to add a text block. Then we're going to add another text block to the horizontal box, and then select the button, Control D, over to the bottom of the hierarchy, select the vertical box, set it to fill, and then select the button on the left, set it to fill, horizontal alignment to the left, rename it to units negative, make sure it is variable, select the text block within, and then change the text to lesser than, select the text block, and then set its horizontal alignment to center and fill, and then select the button on the right, rename it to units positive, is variable, fill, and then alignment, horizontal alignment to the right. Select the text block inside, and then change the content to the greater than, and then we're going to select the horizontal box, and then Control D, and then the second horizontal box, select the button on the left, change its name to transmission, and then the one on the right as well, change its name to transmission, and then we're going to add another horizontal box. So a horizontal box, add it to the vertical box, and then in this horizontal box, we are going to add a slider and a text block. Select the text block and then give it a padding on the left of 20. Select the slider and then set it to fill, and then select the three horizontal boxes, set them to fill, vertical alignment to center, and that will be it for the appearance. Actually select the slider first before we forget, and then we're going to call this one assist slider is variable. Select the text block, and then this one is assist text and is variable. Now we can compile and save. Head over to the graph, and then in here we're going to create a couple functions. First function we're creating is load units, and then we're going to drag off and then look for does save game exist. The save game we're looking for is units, and then before we move on, we need to create a variable, and then this one is going to be KMH question mark, and then we're going to create another variable, and then this one is going to be auto question mark, and then now back to the does save game exist, drag off from the return value, branch, and then from the branch true, drag off, and then load game from slot slot we're looking for is units. From the return value, drag off and then cost to BP save game. From the SBP save game, drag off and then get KMH, and then drag in the KMH, drop it on the pin, and then connect the execution pin, and then that will be it. Compile save. Next function is going to be load transmission, and then we're going to head over to the load units, copy the does save game exist branch, load game, and then cost 2, Control C, head back to the load transmission, Control V, and then connect the execution pin, change the slot name to transmission, do the same by the load game, and then by the cost to drag off and then get auto, and then take the auto variable that we have here, drag it in, drop it on the pin, and then connect the execution pin, and then that will be it. Compile and save. We're going to create the last function, which is going to be called load assist. And then from here, we're going to do the same as what we did in the audio. So we're going to drag off and then look for does save game exist. Save game we're going to look for is counters there. From the return value, drag off and then branch. From the true, drag off and then load game from slot. The slot is counters there. From the return value, drag off and cost to BP save game. The SBP save game, drag off, promote to variable, and then from the set, drag off and then get counters there, and then we're gonna drag in the assist slider, control, drag it in, drag off, and then set value, connect the execution bin, and then connect from the counters tier to the in value, and then we're gonna drag in the assist text, hold control, drag it in, drag off, and then we're gonna set text, the set text in the widget, and then from the counters tier, drag off, and then we're gonna round, and then from the round, drag off, connect that to the in text, and then connect the execution pin, and then that will be it for the load. And then by default, we're going to drag off and then create save game object. Save game we're creating is the BP save game. Drag in the as BP save game variable, drop it on the return value, and then we're going to copy the code at the top. So select everything after the set as BP save game, Control D, connect the execution pin, and then connect from the set to the get counters there, and then after the set text, drag off and then save game to slot. Slot is the as BP save game, drag and drop it on the pin. Slot name is counters there, and then that will be it. I'm gonna compile and save, head back to event graph, and then on the event construct, we are going to drag in the functions, load assist, load units, load transmission, and then just connect them up. And then now we're going to do the unit down to the variables by the units negative, on click, units positive, on click, and then drag in the KMH variable, hold Alt, drag it in, and then Control D, and then connect the execution pin, and then from either of the set, drag off and then look for create save game object, connect the other execution pin, the save game, BP save game, and then we're going to drag in the as BP save game variable, drop it on the return value, and then we're going to drag off and then look for set KMH, connect the execution pin, bring in the KMH variable, drop it on the pin, and then we're going to drag off from the set and then save game to slot. Save game object is the SBP save game, drop it on the pin, and then the slot name is the units. And then that will be it for the units. I'll compile and then save. And then the next one is the transmission. So transmission negative, on click, transmission positive, on click, drag in the auto, hold Alt, drag it in, connect the execution pins, and then we can copy the code up here. So we're going to copy the create, the set, and the save game object along with the variable. Control D, connect the execution pins, and then from the set as BP save game, I'm going to drag off and then set auto, connect the execution pins, take the auto variable, drop it on the pin, and then that will be it. Oh, we need to change the save game slot name, change the slot name to transmission, and that's it for the transmission. Compile and save. And then now we're going to do the counters the assist. So we're going to select the assist slider, on value changed, and then we are going to drag in the assist slider, hold control, drag it in, drag off, and then set value. Under behavior, set value, connect the execution pin first, and then from the value connect to in value, and then from the value again drag off, and then look for round, and then want to drag in the assist text, drag off from assist text, and then set text, widget set text, connect the execution pin, and then from the round connect to the in text, drag this out a bit, and then after the set text, drag off and then look for create save game object. Save game object is the BP save game. Drag in the as BP save game variable, drop it on the return value. From the set, drag off and then set counters there, connect the execution pin, drag in the assist slider, drag off, and then get value, the get value function. From the get value, connect that to the set counters there, and then from the set counters there, drag off and then save game to slot. Save game object is the as BP save game. Drag and drop it on the pin. The slot name is counters there. So I'm going to compile and save. I'm going to head back to the designer. And then on the slider, select the slider, set the max value to 10, and then the step size to 1. And then that is going to be it for, oh no, wait, no, there's still one more thing we need to do. We need to set the bindings for the units and the transmission. So on the text, the unit text block, we're going to go over to text, and then we're going to create a binding. So create new binding, rename the binding to get units, and then we're going to drag out the return node, drag in the KMH variable, control, drag it in, drag off, and then look for branch, and then from the return node, return value, my bad. From the return value, drag off, and then promote to variable, and then this variable is going to be unit text, and then the unit text, hold alt, and then drag it in, control D, and then if it's true, we're going to set this to KMH, and then if it's false, to MPH. Connect the MPH to the false, and then connect both to the return node, and then we're going to compile and then do the same for the transmission. So the transmission text block, create binding, drag it off to the side, and then just rename the function to get transmission, and then we're going to drag in the auto, hold control, drag it in, drag off, and look for branch, and then from the return node, return value, drag off, promote to variable. This one is going to be the transmission text. Hold alt, drag in the transmission text, control D to duplicate it. And then the top one, since it's auto question mark true, I'm going to set it to automatic. And then if it's false, set it to manual. And then connect both of them to the return node. We're going to compile and save. Then we're going to play the level just to see if it works. Settings, gameplay. So currently it's set to MPH and manual. We go back, forward. Okay, I see where we went wrong. We actually forgot to specify by the code which one is true and which one is false, it became false automatically. So when we select the positive, it needs to be true for both of them. Each one is positive, it needs to be true. Okay, so now it should work. Just gonna play the level again. Settings, gameplay, and it has changed. We are getting values. Just gonna leave this like this. So it's KMH automatic and then a value of 7, back, quit, and then play the level again to see if it saved the values. Settings, gameplay, KMH automatic with a value of 7. It appears to be working. We cannot move on further with any of these because the display for the units takes place in the UHD widget. So we're only going to get to that one later on. The auto happens in the parent vehicle blueprint, and we only get to it later on as well as the counter steer, which also happens in the parent vehicle. So we'll get to that later on as well. But for now, at least we know that the values are being changed and they are being saved and loaded correctly. With that, that brings us to the end of this video, and until the next one.